This week on the Young Pioneer Podcast, we're closing out 2025 with a look back at our biggest year yet, where we went, what's coming next, and where you want us to go in 2026. Plus, a first-hand debrief from Pyongyang after the Pyongyang International Film Festival and a real discussion on what's actually changing inside North Korea. I'm Justin Martell, and this is the Young Pioneer Podcast.
조선중앙방송입니다.
Welcome back to the Young Pioneer Podcast. This is Season 3, Episode 9, and the final episode of 2025. It's been another big year for Young Pioneer Tours. Throughout 2025, we continued doing what we do best, taking curious travelers to some of the world's most unique, misunderstood, and difficult-to-reach destinations. We expanded our footprint across the Pacific and Africa, continued pushing deeper into least visited countries, and reinstated long-awaited tours to China, including in Tibet and Xinjiang, as well as Russia. From remote islands to post-colonial capitals to places most tour companies won't even touch, including those your mother wishes you'd stayed away from. It's been a year defined by access and getting people to places they never thought they'd actually see. And that momentum carries straight into 2026, which brings us to our annual YPT poll. Every year we ask where you want us to go next, and more importantly, we actually follow through. 2 years ago, you voted for Russia. Last year, India. Both happened. From past polls, we've also delivered Antarctica, added new West Africa routes, launched tours to Sikkim and Western Sahara, and built out a whole stack of itineraries based on your feedback. So once again, the poll is live. Head to youngpioneertours.com and cast your vote in all three categories: which new countries YPT should go to in 2026, which regions you want more of, and what kind of tours you want us to expand. Voting stays open until the first week in January, so take a minute, have your say, and help shape where we and you are headed next year. Now that we've handled the formalities, we figured we'd close out the year by talking about the question that never really goes away. When will North Korea reopen for tourism? Well, we don't have a definitive answer yet, but at the end of October, Rowan Beard and I had the opportunity to travel to Pyongyang for the 18th annual Pyongyang International Film Festival. While we both spent time in Rason earlier this year, nothing quite prepared us for the changes in the capital. From the availability of Wi-Fi for foreign visitors, to sprawling new districts reaching all the way towards the airport, upgraded dining options, and even rideshare-style apps, the North Korean capital feels noticeably different. So in this episode, we're doing a full post-trip recap, what's changed, what hasn't, and what it might all mean going forward. Roll the tape. So I'm sitting here with Rowan Beard, co-founder of YPT, and we just got back from our trip to the 18th annual Pyongyang International Film Festival in Pyongyang, DPRK, North Korea. And it was Rowan's first time back to Pyongyang since the pandemic, after having visited more than 100 times. In recent years, of course, if you're a traveler with YPT, you can find Rowan on any of our tours across pretty much any continent. But prior to COVID, Rowan was pretty much focused on North Korea almost exclusively. So it was a big deal for Rowan to return. And of course, I was there, and I'll interject some of my observations and opinions. But Rowan, I want to talk to you, okay? Rowan Weird. That's what the Koreans called you, right?
That's what they call me, Rowan Weird. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me. And hello to all the pioneers who are tuned in listening to this podcast. It's great to have you guys on the channel.
Yes, indeed. Hello to our listeners out there. So actually, we were first back in North Korea back in February, and when we went to Rason. I guess my first question would be, how did it feel to return to North Korea then, back in February, after so long away?
Yeah, fairly surreal. And it was crossing into Rason during winter, which I did a few times previously, so it all felt very comfortable. But it was a very special moment to be, the first Western tourist to enter the border. You directly behind me, Gareth Johnson, CEO of YPT, also directly behind us. And it was great. It was a great feeling to be back in the country. At the time, everything seemed more promising. We had cracked it open and it looked like things were going very well. But it was, 3 weeks later, it all got shut down pretty quickly. But I still remember that moment very well, stepping in, and it was great times. I played in my head sometimes, yeah.
Absolutely. It was certainly a triumphant and memorable moment for me, and I'm sure you felt the same. I mean, going back to Rason felt very much like old school DPRK, maybe pre-pandemic or even a little bit before pre-pandemic. And going back to Pyongyang was not to disparage our friends in Rason in any way, but going to Pyongyang just a few weeks ago was totally different. So how did that compare to your early trips back in the last decade when you were leading groups through Pyongyang?
When I was doing the groups before the pandemic, I usually entered North Korea by train. I was living in Dandong on the border in China, so that was my usual way in and out. I rarely flew into Pyongyang, although I'd done it a few times. So getting that grand entrance when you step on board the Air Koryo flight, the Tupolev 204, it was a very special feeling. I've flown around a lot more since the pandemic, doing other destinations for YPT, so I became familiar with a lot of different aircraft types. And shout out to Josh Kyle, who was on the podcast before. He's one of my good friends, and he also got me into the aviation. So when I stepped onto this Russian plane, it was great. It was like, all right, now this is more special. And as we took off, headed towards Pyongyang, we experienced the Air Koryo treatment again, had the classic mystery burger, was on board with a couple of foreigners that we didn't know, some Russians and Chinese mostly, who we got to know pretty well on the trip. But yeah, landing, setting foot back into Pyongyang, dealing with immigration, the customs, it felt like it was all just happened just yesterday. Like the 5 years suddenly became a bit of a blip, and it was back to normal in the country.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love to say with some sort of wistful poetry that, stepping off the plane at the Pyongyang International Airport was like no time had passed. But as we came down over the city, it was obvious that years had gone by. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that struck me after, we met our handlers that Justin and I were about to hang out for the next 8 days or so. One of the guys I recognized used to be a Chinese guy, and he came straight up to you and I, Justin, and he was like very happy to see us both. And so we knew there was good times going to be hitting us. But yeah, we jumped on the bus as we made our way towards Pyongyang City, because Pyongyang Airport, Sunan Airport, is about an hour north of the capital. So I'm used to, the roads not being so good back in the day, but they repaved the road. So that was like that's a nice welcome comfort feeling. And it didn't take long for us to hit Pyongyang's newest mega district, Hwasong district. And you're faced with these brand new modern buildings, nothing like I'd seen before in Pyongyang, and built quite far out of the city, but it led all the way to the city. Like, this district was massive. So that was when I was like, okay, yeah, it's been 5 years. It has been some time, but a lot has changed in the country. And from that point on, that's when we started to learn a lot more over the next couple of days.
For our listeners who have visited the DPRK, you'll no doubt remember that drive from the airport, which was pretty much like a half hour through farmland outside the city, but the new Hwasong district stretches pretty much right up to the airport. So as we made our way towards the city center, and then we went to a very familiar place, the Yanggakdo Hotel, which I think was kind of our second home for a while pre-pandemic. And you saw some familiar faces among the staff. And what was that like?
That was really cool. I was actually the two things I was mostly thinking about is, one, what is the condition of the hotel not being that busy, not having too many tourism? And the second one is like, who's actually still working there? Because, staying at the Yanggakdo since 2012, in and out with tour groups, you do get to know the staff members really well. And you do actually work together because you have group members who are around doing stuff, doing certain activities and eating places. So you build up like a good repertoire with each other. But yeah, it was great to see that a lot of staff members are still there. It was even great to see that they still remembered me, even though I'm 5 years older, less hair, a little bit fatter, still tall, so I guess it's not that hard. But that was great. And the condition of the Yanggakdo was kept in really good condition. I remember when we walked into the hotel room, Justin and I were sharing a room. Like, even your reactions, Justin, was like, ooh, this is nice. It was nice.
Sure was. So as mentioned previously, we were there for the 18th Pyongyang International Film Festival. And let's talk about the festival. We had the privilege this year to serve as agents for the festival. We were collecting submissions from filmmakers, and we were able to submit quite a few from filmmakers in South Africa, in the Balkans, Eastern Europe, the UK, Canada. I will say... maybe not too many made it in, but we did get at least one film in from Albania, but that was great because it opened the door for us to be able to visit as agents and collaborators of the festival. Let's talk about it, though, because this was my first PIF, and I'm a pretty big cinema nerd for anybody who reads what I write. And I've always wanted to go, but I think you've been to several in the past. So how did this one compare, this sort of comeback edition of PIF? How did it compare to previous versions of the festival?
Well, each PIF I've been to, the opening ceremony, they've always become bigger and better, not just with the performances that the Koreans do, but the presentation, the amount of technology. Like, they got bigger screens, they got more LED screens, they had fog machines and lasers. Like, you can tell more money and more effort's going into it. They're making it more of a grander experience, and it's good to see because, you know, it is the International Film Festival, so they want to meet the standards of other festivals around the world, which I haven't been to. You've been to various others, Justin, from the films you've made and the events you've been to, but this is the only one I've been to, and I think it's pretty cool. It's definitely got that North Korean-esque vibe about it, but it's this year was definitely the greatest and the best one I've seen. More foreign film turnout, it turned out, it looks like they're becoming a little bit more open-minded with what is shown. We got snippets of all the other films. There was like over 100 that were allowed and that were screened throughout the week of it being shown. And the one that stood out to me was that Vietnamese horror film. You know, that part where the guy reaches into the water and pulls out this headless chick and there's blood and water coming out. And I was like, whoo, this is spicy. I kind of like it. If the Koreans are into this, I'm into that too. So that was like another big change that I've realized that they're kind of opening up to more of what foreign cinema really is.
So staying at the Yangakdo Hotel makes a lot of sense for PIF because it's held at the Yangakdo International Cinema House, which is a very grand sort of brutalist cinema that's also right on Yangak Island. And as we pulled up, it was interesting because you had citizens of Pyongyang going into the festival, and of course our foreign delegation, which I think numbered around 50. We had some Russian, Chinese, me as dual St. Kitts and Nevis, and also American. You were the sole Australian. We had some from Greece, Austria, Italy, and Switzerland.
So it was like a good mix of us. Not a huge delegation, but a delegation big enough for this kind of political sort of situation that's happening in the country. I was pretty impressed by the turnout, and it was good to. I mean, for you, I guess it was also great to see a bunch of other filmmakers who were interested in having their film shown in North Korea.
Yeah, it was really refreshing because, you know, as somebody who was working on the submissions and I talked to a lot of filmmakers, I would either get two reactions, and usually it was the negative one. We had a lot of filmmakers. Well, it was either they'd made something that really wouldn't fit to play at PIF because it has themes that it wants to emphasize, you know, through the films that are programmed. So those are like anti-aggression war epics, science fiction, intimate character dramas, documentaries, and things like that. So the reaction I would get either that the whatever the filmmaker had made, you know, wasn't suitable, the content wasn't suitable, or they were just not into having their movies shown in North Korea. So it was very refreshing to be around filmmakers who either were into having their film shown in North Korea or were at least curious about it. So that was great. And as we pulled up, it was quite interesting because we were with our foreign delegation. There were citizens of Pyongyang going into the cinema, and then we also had representatives from the various diplomatic missions. The thing is, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on at night, especially I think if you're living in Pyongyang full time. So this was something, big event to go out to. So I think we pulled up and we saw the sole representative to the mission from Syria, right?
Yeah, that's right. And on the closing ceremony, I was able to sit next to her. She was really cool, but it was great to see the car there, the new Syrian flag which I thought they would have shut down the embassy in Pyongyang. I thought they would have cut ties, but they've still got that going on, which is great to see. And she's having a good time in Pyongyang. Had a good chat. But yeah, we on the opening night, you and I were sitting directly behind the Russian embassy folks, who were pretty curious about who we were because they heard us speak in native English. Each of them spoke really good English. That blew my mind. But it was good chance to say hi to all the Pyongyang expats because we've been out of the country for 5 years. Some of them had still been based there before the pandemic, so it was cool to quickly get in touch with them and let them know that, hey, maybe tourism's around the corner. We'll see you guys more often.
Yeah, and I think we also talked with somebody from the Nigerian embassy as well, and I think it was his first posting, and he was getting used to life in Pyongyang.
Some of the comments he made. Yeah, I met the Palestinian mission representative there as well. That was you just ran into like really interesting folks from various parts of the world, and here we are in Pyongyang, North Korea. So very unique.
Totally. And it was great. I mean, it felt like I've been to film festivals all over the world. It was more fun than a lot of Western festivals that I've been to. And as we walked in, there was kind of large photo displays right outside of the cinema that said, Pyongyang, our capital city, unfolding a new history of change. And it was showing the transformation of the Hwasong district through stages 1 to 3, which were completed between 2022 and 2024. And then they sort of had a banner above welcoming the participants. And I was looking at the posters that they had up on the cinema house right outside the entrance. And, it was kind of, in the past I've seen pictures and they've kind of just had mostly sort of the classic movies from the 70s and 80s with maybe one new title thrown in at the end. But this time the posters kind of represented sort of a more like the full breadth of the country's cinema history. So it had the first poster was The Flower Girl from 1972, continued with A Broad Bellflower from 1987, and then it jumped to Story of Our Home and A Diploma of Graduation. Those are both from 2016. And then it jumps again to the most recent productions, which were A Day and a Night, 72 Hours, and then the brand new one that we watched while we were there, Days and Nights of Confrontation. So you really saw in this the kind of like eras of cinema history on the posters there as we were going in.
Yeah, and I think you and I came in at a really good time because North Korea has really changed their approach to cinema. They're taking it. I think they've taken it to a whole new level where they're introducing new themes, and I think this is the beginning of it. I think we're going to see a lot more. There's going to be a lot more films in the future because there was kind of like that gap during the 2010s. There was more like TV series, but now they've gone back to cinema. So I think it's great to see. It's got me more interested. But you're the buff, Justin. I've never met anyone on this planet who knows anything more about DPRK film and cinema history than you. And it does take me back to when you and I were first going to the country together. Was it there was a moment when is it 2015, 2017? We were sitting down with our former KITC, so the Korean International Travel Company. That's the travel company YBT works with in Pyongyang. But we're sitting down with him and Justin being an American, and he was a bit he was keeping to himself a little bit, but being friendly enough. But when you broke your knowledge about North Korean cinema, he really opened up, and that blew my mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just one of those things. I mean, obviously, as a filmmaker, I'm interested in films, and if I'm interested in a place, I'm going to also be interested in their cinema output. So, years ago, probably about a decade ago, when I started visiting North Korea, I got into their movies, and I mean, a lot of them are really fun, but it is also a great way to understand how the DPRK interpret history, how they see themselves, and it's a great way to understand the DPRK mindset. And also watching the sort of eras in filmmaking and how the themes changed throughout the years that you had, during the Korean War, they were making Korean War films, emphasizing, their point of view on the Korean War, the Liberation War, as they would call it. And then in the 60s, during the Cholima movement, when they were rebuilding the country, and there was sort of like rapid industrialization, modernization at the time, a lot of the movies emphasized those themes. And then the 70s and 80s, you had Kim Jong-il directly involved in the film production of the company. in the film production of the country. And, he wanted to make movies for commercial export and get North Korean cinema recognition on the international stage. And that, they did have some sort of limited success in that, but it seems like they kind of got stuck figuring out how to navigate the state ideology with making films for commercial exports. So there was sort of some limited success there. And then when you had the economic downturn of the 90s, it kind of went back to late 80s and 90s. It kind of went back to like the local heroes themes. A lot of the movies in that time emphasize when people were leaving the countryside to go to the cities and stuff. So the movies from that time, like I mentioned, A Broad Bellflower, for instance. So the theme of that is encouraging local people who want to leave the countryside for the cities because they don't want to stay and solve, problems with modernization in their hometowns and local areas. It encourages them to stay and help solve those problems rather than just up and leave. And that's what a lot of the cinema output of the 80s, 90s, and even up through the last decade kind of emphasized. And even up through around 2010, 2011, the films, they still looked very retro. But then as we got into 2016, 2017, they started to look much more modern because they stopped shooting on 35 millimeter and they started shooting on digital. But again, a lot of the content was tackling a lot of socialist morality questions and things like that. But now, coming into the new era, and I remember in 2018 we were talking with the KITC partner that you mentioned earlier. He told me that the film studio had been temporarily shut down and that Kim Jong-un was sort of redoing the whole DPRK cinema industry in a Hollywood style. And you hear these things and you kind of go, okay, yeah, sounds good. We'll see what happens with that. But I'm happy to say that now that we're seeing this output from this new Hollywood style, it is very much a very clear, sort of era of Kim Jong-un, in the cinema of the DPRK. So with 72 hours and a day and a night and days and nights of confrontation, it has a lot of real modern production values. 72 hours, which is a two-part epic about the first 3 days of the Korean War and the North Koreans and the battle for Seoul, to capture Seoul. And the other thing that we get, though, is they're really violent. There's a lot of well-choreographed action, explosions, and then even in Days and Nights of Confrontation, which we had the privilege to see while we were there, in that one, you had all kinds of new themes that I've never seen in a DPRK film before. Basically it's centered around a corrupt policeman, and he has a clique, and they conspire to kill General Kim Jong-il. It was set in around 2006, around the time that there was, in fact, a real plot to assassinate Kim Jong-il by blowing up his train. And it does say that this was inspired by true events. And ultimately, the plan is foiled, and they don't end up assassinating Kim Jong-il. But the leader of the plot, this corrupt policeman, he escapes with his son to South Korea, and the movie ends with his son returning, ostensibly, at least we're led to believe, because it's very ominous, and he has this sort of evil look on his face, that he's there to now carry on his father's evil work. Sort of also reinforcing the whole family guilt idea. But we got all kinds of new, modern cinema tricks, CGI, lighting, and also, we had characters getting suffocated with a plastic bag, and it was real bloody. We had some partial nudity, so there was all kinds of new stuff in there.
And I remember these two scenes where they had jump scare tactics, which was pretty cool to see. But it kind of startled some of the foreigners who were watching the film with. But the Koreans we were sitting next to, they had seen the film twice or three times, so they were anticipating it. But yeah, that plastic bag suffocation scene, there was two of them, where you saw two people get murdered using a plastic bag, and it was full on. Even I was like, whoa, is this the director's uncut for foreigners edition? But no, that was the Korean edition for Koreans. And like I said, I think you and I were there at a really interesting time, because they've shifted the cinema, taken it to a new level. And I think we're going to see a lot more interesting things from North Korean cinema in the future. yeah, I'm pretty excited. And I haven't been this excited about North Korean films before.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. It used to be before you watched them if you were kind of nerdy, and I remember about it. If you were nerdy about the Korean cinema, and I remember we had many conversations. I'm like, oh yeah, there's this one and that one. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, it sounds alright. It sounds cute, whatever. But these are actually much more accessible. The sort of messaging is a lot more subtle by North Korean. I should say subtle by North Korean standards, because it's still pretty obvious. But for instance, they had this big dramatic moment in Days and Nights of Confrontation, where you had the corrupt policeman and his wife has figured out what he's doing, and he says to her, well, if I go down, you're going to go down with me, and we have a son, so what's your decision? And he stabs her in the leg, this very dramatic way, and he leans into her and he says, who do you choose, your husband or this nation? And she chooses the nation and gets suffocated with a plastic bag. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
She does. Very graphically, yeah. Well, the usual themes that you were talking about in North Korean film before, the whole lot of war and battles. I tended to avoid those films when I was watching them. Like before the pandemic, we were in touch with the KFS, and we had access to use the Yanggakdo International Cinema for a private viewing. And it gave us a chance to meet with directors, an actor, or anyone who was involved for a Q&A. And whenever the Koreans asked me, like, oh, what film do you want to watch? Do you want to watch these like war films? I usually go like an alternative path. And the two I chose before, I mean, we watched Order Number 27 because we had the director available. I was like, yeah, we'll watch that. And that's a pretty cool film. But yeah, when they give me a selection of film, one of the ones I would choose is like a traffic controller on Crossroads. I enjoyed that one because, tourists were really interested in the Pyongyang traffic ladies. And so, it was a story about a guy that didn't follow the instructions given by a Pyongyang traffic woman who was keeping the streets, safe. And he thought he could be a bit cheeky, but, she's beautiful. So he was like trying to use this like charm to impress her, but she was having none of it, and so he broke a violation again on the crossroad that she was working, and so she banned him from traveling on that crossroad. And he was a delivery truck driver, so he had to find alternative routes to get to his destination that would add further time, and he was having issues. And so yeah, he ended up making good ends with her and being like, yes, I will continue to follow the laws and traffic in Pyongyang, which is, it's cute, it's nice. And the other one, Oh Youth, which was like a family comedy, which was, yeah, it went down well, yeah. But there's a couple of good North Korean films out there before, but yeah, I am excited to see where it takes it to. The Days and Night and Confrontation, the film that we watched, I love how dark the ending was. So, how Justin describes, the build up to the plot, but at the end, it shows the opening of Hwaseong district. So they've implemented a new district opening in Pyongyang. They've incorporated into the film, and they've got the son of the father who was a traitor. He's in the crowds and he's holding a North Korean flag, and everyone's like cheering on, like, yeah, and it shows like a motorcade going down. It doesn't show who it is exactly, but you'd assume that it's Kim Jong-un, and he's waving his flag in a very like I couldn't be bothered doing this, but he has like a very pissed off look on him. Like, you can tell he's going to be the next traitor. And then his girlfriend or wife comes into the picture and she starts cheering, and he holds her hand and grips it tight, and the camera closes in on his hands, holding her to be like, hey, like, don't celebrate. This is, we will get our chance. And that's pretty dark. And I like that. I like how North Korea is talking about these things that come up in their country, and they've turned into a cinema. So, and for you and I, Justin, when we were talking about the reactions with our North Korean interpreters about the film, and they were like, yeah, it's pretty open now. Now we can pretty much discuss certain topics, and I found that really interesting, very fascinating.
I mean, for sure. As far as I know, for instance, like the real plot to try to assassinate Kim Jong-il by blowing up his train, I don't know that that's ever been actually reported domestically within the DPRK. So having their reaction, and also the film acknowledging that it was based on true events, was very interesting. And when we sat down with our guides afterwards, and we had a discussion about the movie yeah, they were very aware of this sort of shift in, how these things are presented. And they were saying, it was quite funny because they said, back before it was like, long live the general. But, we're not the Taliban. We're not like Allahu Akbar. We're not like that. We're, it's much more subtle now. It's who do you choose, me or the country? I'm not sure if it's subtle exactly, but it's different for sure.
That hit with our Korean guys like so well. They thought that was really cool, and they were really into.
Yeah, we kept acting it out throughout the trip.
Yeah, we did.
So in other words, these movies do find a domestic audience, and again, I think, we have an interest in the country, an interest in DPRK cinema, but I do think they are more sort of watchable and palatable for your average viewer, somebody outside of the country. I want to see if Kim Jong-un keeps up his interest in the film industry of the country and keeps having such a large role in it moving forward. But going back to the foreign films, because we did post some content on social media, and we did get some comments. Well, how international is it? And I must say, it's pretty international. And other than, obviously you had some embassy officials there, and we had the international delegation that were there, but it's the Yangakto International Cinema House, the main screening room, is a 2,000 seat room. And it was totally full, and it was 90% North Koreans from Pyongyang watching the movies. And so we had movies from Iran, Vietnam, Thailand, Russia, China, of course, but we also had Portugal, Mexico thrown in there, India as well.
And there was one film from the UK as well, which I found very interesting.
One film from the UK was, and also interesting in light of recent events, which were no UK nationals allowed to attend PIF, which was quite interesting.
There seems to be a bit of a political situation between the UK and the DPRK, but we'll see what happens. I'm sure that can be quickly resolved, and we'll start seeing British nationals at and hopefully as well the British embassy reopen in Pyongyang, so we can catch them at the next PIF 2026. That'd be cool.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we've talked about PIF, we've talked about the new movies. Let's talk about some of the other things we did. So we were the first Westerners to visit Mount Myohang since the pandemic. So how did it feel to be back there, especially given your long history with that site?
That was another very meaningful one, because working in DPRK, you always try to be the first or whatnot, and the country is it is open to Russian tourists at the moment, and I read recently a little over 4,000 Russian tourists has visited the country this year, which is big numbers because Russian numbers before weren't that big, and Westerners as a whole were about 4,000 to 5,000 each year. So that's a pretty big part. But they hadn't arranged any Westerners to visit Myeongsan during that time, excluding the Russians. So that was great to come back. The highway brought back memories of all the amount of groups that I brought up there. Even the memories of staying at the two hotels up in Myeongsan, which we stayed at Hyangsan, which is a really nice 5-star hotel. And again, it's another hotel they've looked after very well. So, when we were staying there, I was looking forward to bringing future groups there. But, the highlight of going to Mount Myohang region is the International Friendship Exhibition. And in 2013, YPT, we had a chance to present a gift to Kim Jong-un. It was for the 60th anniversary of the National Travel Association, which is basically the government department that looks after tourism as a whole for the country. And it's displayed inside the exhibition. And because of that, we get a bit of VIP treatment from the staff that work there. And the woman we had who greeted us on our arrival, she's the senior head guide, recognized me straight away. I recognized her. Big smile. It was really good to see her. She was asking where we'd been, so I had to kind of explain, hey, tourism isn't open. She wasn't queued up on that, but she was excited to to see us again, to show us around, but also the possibility of tourism returning. And I could see she really meant that, because that is a big part of what she does as well. She does like receiving foreign guests and showing, her pride in her work and what she's involved in this exhibition. So yeah, and obviously the exhibition is in really nice condition.
And I think we should elaborate probably a little bit. What exactly is the IFE and what does it represent?
So it's gifts given by governments, organizations, or individuals to each of the leaders. So it was given to the leader who was the president of the country at the time, or leading the country at the time. So Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un. And so it's two giant exhibition houses buried that they're on the outside of the mountain, but they are built into the mountain as well. So you have gifts such as train carriages from Mao and Stalin, bulletproof vehicles from Stalin, a plane given by the Soviet Union to Kim Il-sung, and various other gifts like pianos, furniture, vases, or tea sets, such as us, for example. That's what we gave to Kim Jong-un, a tea set to represent friendship. But you do see a couple of, some wild, creative ideas that are gifted, and it's great. The only shameful thing is you can't take any photos of it. So the only thing you can have is just like the stories that you and I share. But the best way to know more about it, of course, is to see it. And it usually is like people's highlight when we go up there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it really is really impressive, and it's well curated, well done. I think the most interesting and unique thing that we saw was the wax figures. I've never seen anything like that in my life. And we didn't even get to see Mother Kim Jong-suk, but we got to see the wax figures of Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung. When you're in the country, there are statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. Oftentimes they are either bronze, or if they are lifelike, they are very larger than life. But to go into these rooms, it's basically a room you walk in, and up in front of you is kind of like a Korean landscape with the respective leader. They have their own rooms. Respective leaders standing in the center, smiling, gazing off into the distance. But to see them in their actual height was quite striking. I don't know. It was really surreal. I don't know how else to describe it.
It's an illusion. It does look like it's their actual height, but they are still actually much taller than their actual height. But they built it into the scenery. I've seen these wax statues many times, and I've had chances to like really kind of observe a lot of the detail. But yeah, it looks super lifelike, and the scenery behind it, the background is super lifelike too. But it's painted and it's done with props. But they're bigger because I can stand up pretty close to them without getting too close. But they're a bit shorter than me. But in real life, I don't think they were. Yeah. But the presentation is pretty. The presentation is pretty surreal, and yeah, I found it. Yeah, I'm glad that was your first time. It broke you in.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I'm joking around about the wax figures, but like I said earlier, it is very well curated, well presented. You can spend 2 hours there and not even really scratch the surface. I mean, there's whole wings and areas that we didn't even get to go through, and we saw a lot. And you'd be really surprised too, because a lot of these gifts are given by foreign dignitaries. I mean, you have gifts from Bill Clinton, Madeleine Albright, to Dennis Rodman, but then you have gifts going all the way back from the Soviet Union, countries that no longer exist. And you'd be really surprised just how many countries have had close ties to the DPRK in the past, or still do, or also countries that have had like Juche study groups that have sent gifts and things like that. I mean, I think, what was the number? Was it like 189?
189, countries? Yeah. Even like said NIPS and what was it? St. Kitts and Nevis. Sorry.
Yeah, St. Kitts and Nevis had even had a Juche study group and had sent a gift.
They have a really wild fact. They say if you spent like 30 seconds looking at each of the gifts at the friendship exhibition, you end up spending something like 14 years there. There's a lot of stuff there, but I've seen quite a fair bit of it. But it helps when you have someone from that country in your group, because they will specifically go out of their way to show you what your people from your country or your government or a company has given to the leaders. But we didn't find St. Kitts and Nevis on our trip because it would have been in the other exhibition hall.
And we got into the Caribbean, and she was able to find like Barbados and St. Vincent and stuff, but St. Kitts and Nevis must have been elsewhere.
Yeah. We briefly saw the Australian section, which I've seen before, and I love it because it would be like, look, there's a boomerang. It's like, yeah, there's somebody gifted a boomerang. Nice, living it up. You know, what else are we going to give? So yeah, that was great being there again. It was even better staying the evening in the Hyangsung Hotel. So this is, as I was saying before, this 5-star hotel that's nestled between the valleys and Mount Myohang. It's really international, like high grade stuff, and we had good fun. We Justin and I kind of convinced our interpreters who are up for a bit of fun to let's not eat at the restaurant in the hotel. Let's go out and eat. So they took us like around the back of the hotel, which is still part of the camp, like, you know, the campus of the hotel, but something more for locals who are passing by to eat. So we had
it's like a local seafood restaurant.
Yeah, we had the Korean barbecue there, but the specialty was the rainbow trout, the raw rainbow trout caught in the rivers through Mount Myohang, and that spicy dippy sauce. So you eat it raw, so when we first, because I'd never tried it before, so when Justin and I first ate it, we ate it raw, thinking it was like sashimi, and we both kind of looked at each other and were like, "This isn't so good. Am I missing something?" And then the sauces come out, and then the Koreans were like, "Yeah, dip it in the sauce, like dummies." And so we did that, and it's all about the sauce, and it was actually freaking amazing.
It's all about the sauce, and it comes out with it's kind of cut down the middle, and the heart, they leave the heart on, and the heart is still beating. I think you ate the heart.
I ate the heart a couple of times because the Koreans were like, "Eat the heart. I didn't see you eat it the first time." I'm like, "All right, I'll be the dancing monkey. I'll eat it for the third time." And it was pretty good. The whole thing was great. I think we ordered like 6 or 7 dishes of it. It was nuts.
Yeah, in the hotel, the Haesan Hotel, it has a great like billiards room. There's a really nice bar on the, sort of off of the lobby.
And a great sauna.
And a great sauna and a great pool.
So like the sauna area, like when you do saunas in Korea, you do get naked, but they separate the men and the women. And so Justin and the Koreans ran ahead of me, and they were in the sauna. So I think I had access to the Wi-Fi. It also has Wi-Fi now, which is great. So I was using the Wi-Fi, and I caught up to you guys, and I was like, okay, cool. So I got down to my birthday suit and went to walk into the spa area and didn't realize it was both male and female. And so kind of screamed like a girl and ran back in to put my trunks back on. That was the most manly thing I've done of this year.
It was the Koreans who told me not to tell you. I was like waiting to meet you and tell you, but the Koreans were like, no, don't tell Rowan. Let's see what happens.
I love that. The guys are great. They had such good sense of humors, and yeah, I kind of miss him actually.
And I think the other sort of big highlight, and what was very unique about being there as part of a delegation, because obviously you go with tourists and we bring customers, and that's a great experience and it's a lot of fun, but it's kind of difficult to arrange things that are sort of outside of the itinerary in the evenings. If you eat outside of the hotel, it will kind of be at one of the bigger restaurants that's kind of more frequented by tourists or meant for tourists. But when you're there for, if we're there on a research trip or we're there on for a delegation or something like this, we have a little bit more freedom in the evenings to go out and explore the city. So we went out, I think 3 nights out on the town in Pyongyang.
Painting it red?
Yeah, we were painting the town red, and if it weren't red enough. First night we went out to the new Taedonggang beer bar. And all of the places we went to were brand new restaurants in the Hwasong district, which it's worth noting, it used to be like 15-20 minutes to drive where you needed to go, but to go out to Hwasong, to where we wanted to go and eat or go to the bar, it was usually around a 30 to 40 minute drive, which was pretty interesting, and there was a fair bit of traffic on the roads.
To take it back a bit, then that was another like, oh my God, it has been 5 years, because when we would take the taxi out to go out for the evening, we used to call the taxi from the landline at the hotel and then wait for the taxi to pick us up at the hotel, which would take, 20, 25 minutes. But our Korean interpreters popped open their phone, opened up an app which was very much like Uber, and ordered a taxi which came in less than 2 minutes, and it had the distance, it calculated the fare, and I thought that was really cool, super convenient. So the North Koreans access this on their own internal 4G internet. It doesn't have access to the outside internet, but that was super convenient. But yeah, as you were saying, like when we zipped across town, we got stuck in traffic. There was more things happening downtown because private car ownership is going up.
And we saw all kinds. Again, you have more traffic on the road, and then cafes, electric cars, car dealerships, the new gaming center that was sort of widely reported on. So how much did that change, like the old image of Pyongyang?
It depends what part of the city you're in. Like, we did go to Gwanbok Street, Liberation Street, for the circus performance, and that street was built in 1989, and not much has changed there. They've kept up the appearance and everything looks nice. But when you cross through downtown, so Yanggakdo Hotel is on an island, which is located fairly downtownish. The Pyongyang railway station's nearby. But driving through there, you can see they've put up a lot of new apartment buildings just in that area, and it sprawled from like downtown to Pyongyang railway station up towards the northern districts, and you can tell that they knocked down the old Stalinist buildings that were there that they built really quickly after the Korean War, as Pyongyang was flattened. So they got rid of those old buildings and they put up these really impressive, like 20, 30-story apartment buildings. But do you remember that brown one? The guys kept talking about it. It hasn't been officially opened yet because they're still doing downstairs. But to me, the building looked a bit Japanese. And they were saying, like, this is like a really high-end apartment block right on the Taedong River. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. That looks cool. But yeah, like that. To answer your question, yeah, you can still see some landmarks that remind you you're in the country, but it has developed. The skyline of Pyongyang has changed, and I wasn't expecting it to be so much. 5 years, me not going there, and you think there's a lot of isolation. You got sanctions that have hit really hard, but the Koreans, they're pulling it off. They're still doing these massive construction projects. They're still housing the newlyweds and the people of the country. And, it's good to see. I'm glad that, friends that were on the waiting list before to get a new house when they married back in the 2010s, I can assume now, I hope as well, that they got these new apartments, and there's a lot of them. Hwasong alone is like 50,000 apartment blocks. That's quite a lot.
So our first stop when we were out in Pyonghatan, as we dubbed the Hwasong district, was the new Taedonggang Beer Hall, which is sort of styled like a German beer hall. What were your impressions of that?
Oh, I loved it. I've read so much about it. I've been so keen to go to this place, and I feel very envious of everyone who lives on that block around it. It's a great beer bar. 8 beers on tap now. Taedonggang, they did 7 before. Now they do an 8th one. I can't remember what the 8th one was though. I know it was a dark malt beer. Do you remember what it was?
I don't. Was it not on the beer flight that we had?
It was on the beer flight. So when we did the beer flight, they said, "Oh, there's 8 Taedonggang beers," and that's when I was like, "Whoa! 5 years, you got one more done. That's great." But it was, we got the beer flight. They offered beer flights. They offered German sausages. They had sauerkraut.
As the Korean guides told us, it's Korean style German sausage.
Korean style Germans. It was still very European sausage for Asia. I mean, was it exactly a bratwurst? No, but it's better attempts I've seen at like other places in China, for example, and other places in Asia. They had a really good attempt at it. And it was great.
They also had a pretty wide selection of imported beer as well.
Yeah, I saw what they have. They had a couple of German ones imported, but I think they all came in through China. But the one that really stood out for me was when we went to the closing ceremony of the PIF. They had imported Kirin cans from Japan. I was like, yeah. So they're still getting them in somehow. I have no idea. But anyway, the beer bar, great place to be, and we rocked up pretty late and it was still pretty busy. And I remember we stayed until I think it was 1 a.m. and I think that's the longest an establishment is allowed to officially stay open in the city. So we were pretty much kicked out. But the Koreans, they got a big kick out of it, and it's very heavily German styled, and I'm looking forward to bringing tour groups there. I'm sure they'd get a big kick out of it, especially with the flights, because they had, the old Taedonggang number 2. That's the only bummer, I suppose. So they had, for anyone who's been to North Korea before, Pyongyang with us, you've had the old Taedonggang number 2 brewery that was near the Juche Tower. So I thought they would be expanding to more locations, but apparently they've closed that one. It's under renovation, so it's not clear if they're renovating it to make it another bigger beer bar or if they've actually closed it and moved location. But I hope they expand it more, because the world needs more bars. Yeah. And this is coming from me in the UAE.
So we kind of had our hit list of places that we wanted to see. So the new Taedonggang Beer Hall, well, that was number 1. And then one of the really distinct buildings in Hwasong District it's kind of these 2 like high rises, and then there's this sort of sky bridge that goes between them, and there's a big clock in the center. And we asked about it, like, well, what's there? And they told us, because we actually weren't sure what was up in that sky bridge, if it was just to connect the 2 buildings or what it was. And they said, oh, no, there's a restaurant up there. I forget the actual name of it, but they all just refer to it as the Clock Tower Restaurant. And that was our second night out in Hwasong, and that was also quite interesting, because it was we were told it was probably one of, or the most expensive restaurants in Pyongyang right now. And that said, it was, by any normal standards, I guess by Western standards, it was the equivalent of a night out with 4 or 5 friends in New York or any sort of major Western city. For DPRK citizen, that's going to be quite a bit of money. So the people that are eating there are going to be sort of your upper class North Koreans or embassy personnel working for various diplomatic missions. It was pretty crazy. You go up there, you take the elevator up. There's a sign telling you when Kim Jong-un, took that same elevator up, and when he visited the restaurant. And you walk in, and they've got a lot of foreign liquor on display. You walk. The floor is glass, so you can see the traffic passing under you as you're sitting there and eating. And I think we kind of just got a whole bunch of different stuff to try. Like, we got sushi and spaghetti, pizza. What else?
One of the things that we were pushing to get, we were like, hey, can we get some Taedonggang beer? Can we get some Pyongyang soju? And they were like, no, you can only get the nice stuff here, the foreign stuff. And we found out that, actually, when foreigners come to this restaurant, they do allow for us to have access to local goods. But yeah, you said earlier, like, that this bridge, I thought it was just a passageway, man. I had no idea they put a restaurant in it. And I would have really liked to check out the bridge, not knowing it wasn't a restaurant. But yeah, when we asked the Koreans, like, hey, what's the new best? Like, what is the best restaurant in Pyongyang? That's when they suggested this. And it was really impressive. So we saw the menu. We had sushi, pizza. We had local alcohol, which was great. Thank you, waitresses, for allowing us that. But that sushi, man, God, that was really good sushi. Like, not just for like Korean standards, like world standards. Like, I was really impressed by that. And also, and us saying like it's the most expensive and best restaurant, it wasn't that expensive. Like, we went pretty nuts there, but it wasn't really a heavy bill. It was actually quite reasonable. The atmosphere was very nice. The service was impeccable. Like, we never had to pour our own drinks. The waitresses will come by and pour our drinks. When we walked in, it was busy. Like, all the tables were full. We were really lucky we made that last minute reservation, and we were able to make that happen. There was like a table behind us that had a birthday party, so everyone had their own, reasons to be there. But it was definitely a special occasion restaurant. I remember going to the toilet, and every time I stood up, people would stop having conversations and to kind of look at this giant behemoth guy walk past them. I hope I didn't freak him out, but it was a very nice setting, and probably one of the nicest restaurants I've been to for a while. Yeah,
not just for North Korea, but anywhere. It was a really nice, fine dining experience, and that sort of brings me to. I mean, there really does appear to be a burgeoning middle class in North Korea. I don't, obviously the inclination by people who look at some of these things online or the media is to say this is a showcase for visitors, but I really didn't get that impression at all.
No, and you can see there's other noticeable changes. The majority of people have a smartphone. That we met up with or saw on the street. A lot more electric bikes. So before, when I first went, I didn't see a single electric bike. Now there's many of them. More taxis. My first visit in 2012, I was in the country for 7 days. I saw 2 taxis in total. Now just countless, hundreds of taxis. And another observation, I think you made it, Justin. There was a reduction in solar panels, because there used to be electricity issues in Pyongyang, and so nearly every balcony had a solar panel hanging out to be used to recharge things, power lights, kitchenware. They've all gone, and when we were in the country, we didn't experience a single blackout. And that is unusual for around this time of year, at the end of October, as it starts to get colder. People start to use more heating appliances, and we didn't experience a single blackout or see one in the city. Yeah,
and I asked one of our guides about it, and he just sort of very quietly said, "Yeah, the power situation is improving."
Yeah, could definitely see that. I hope it does, because especially in winter, it can get pretty harsh. You want people to be as comfortable as possible, like anywhere in the world. So. Yeah, it's good to see. It is good to see. So, so after the clock tower, I think it was called like the Kumgang Hotel. After that, we exited. We went down to the street, and as we were getting back into our taxis, we passed that really cool-looking Korean barbecue place that had the flames built onto the building, had this really cool lighted-up sign, and so we kind of guessed, we determined then and there, we're like, all right, tomorrow we're going to that one.
And that was our last night. It was a great farewell dinner, and we were able to sort of recap, the trip with all of our guides, which was quite interesting, because I think by the end, we started with 2, and by the end we had 5.
We started with 2 official interpreters who were there to look up, help us through, translate stuff, make sure we have a comfortable stay. And at the end of the trip, we ended up having 5 because, what can I say, Justin? We're pretty cool. People want to hang out with us. Because we were the only foreigners as part of that delegation who had, excluding the Chinese, but including the Russians and the other Europeans, we were the only ones who had been to North Korea before. So it does make the Koreans feel a bit more at ease. They don't have to explain certain things or answer any questions that it's very normal to have when you first go into North Korea. So they felt like, hey, this is for them it's a paid gig, but they were like, hey, this is pretty fun. We get to try some new things. And when we went to the Clock restaurant, I think that was all their first visit. So I hope they make good plans to bring their wives there next time or something.
And they wanted to talk as well. They wanted to talk about a lot of world news and things that they had heard. They had quite a few questions for me about the death of George Floyd in the U.S. During COVID. And it was even kind of interesting. I remember when we were in the clock tower to see what domestic news was reporting on. And obviously North Korea is very selective in what they cover and they present to domestic viewers and readers, but they were actually reporting on John Bolton's indictment in the U.S., which I thought was quite interesting. But and then they were just also curious of what the lockdown during COVID was like for us, what we experienced, and they just wanted to hear about that.
Yeah, the Koreans are tuned into major events that happen outside of Korea, but they don't get to hear our personal take or foreigners' personal take, and that's what they were more curious to hear. And I thought their reasons and the discussions we had were really reasonable. We're not government representatives; we're just people that live in various places and experience different things. And our opinions sort of lined up, which was pretty. It was good to see, but it wasn't one-sided. It was very neutral discussions. And it just my involvement in the country. Every time when I tell other people this, they probably think I'm crazy. But the North Koreans, they they're not they do have their own opinions. They're not these robots. They don't just follow whatever they're told. And all the ones that we had on this particular trip, they were very clued in and well read, and it was good. It was good hanging out with a couple of intellectuals for a change, not just you and me in a room, Justin. Spewing stuff together.
Exactly, yeah. The intellectuals being the Koreans, not us. All right, well, so with and I want to, because I've kind of been basing my questions off of the blog that you wrote, your 5 key takeaways from the trip, and so you ended the piece on a optimistic note about tourism returning. So, based on what you saw on the ground, and I think I already know the answer, but I should ask, what do you think North Korea is genuinely ready for a reopening if it wants it?
Absolutely. I mean, they're already handling over 4,000 Russian tourists at the moment. They've got the capability, they have the infrastructure. They could improve the infrastructure when it comes to logistics, when it comes to flights in the country, the trains in the country, but that's set by sanctions, not entirely their fault for those in the tourism sector. But they're ready. And the word on the street was, when we were there, was that the 9th Party Congress for the Workers' Party of Korea, which is coming up, I think it's in 4 weeks from this recording, one of the subject matters that would be brought to these high officials and even to Kim Jong-un will be about tourism. So we could receive really big news by the end of this year about what the status of tourism will be for everyone else. And by that, I mean for Chinese and for all other nationalities, about if tourism will return for 2026. So, us here at YPT, we're on standby. We are ready for the moment those gates open, and we can't wait to go back. But, just for now, we're just, we'll play the waiting game with North Korea, and we'll keep focusing on other destinations, and which is keeping us very busy. More than 200 group tours each year. Over 100 different destinations. I reckon we're pretty good without the country, but my heart remains in Pyongyang. It remains in the country, and I just really enjoy showing people around and giving them a bit more of an insight to what they can experience and engage. So, yeah. I hope so. Let's see.
What do you think the future of tourism looks like? After seeing, these new districts in Pyongyang and traveling up to Mount Myeonghang, we know that obviously with the DPRK sort of officially abandoning the idea of reunification with the South, we know that the DMZ is out at least for the time being. I think while the DPRK sort of figures out what the sort of official narrative is with that moving forward. But what do you think tourism looks like when it reopens? Let's say it reopens in 2026.
Okay, yeah, it will definitely go through a hard reboot, which we've already discussed with our partners in the country and outside of the country. There's going to be a limited amount of places to visit at first. So before the pandemic, we had access to 8 of the 9 provinces. And so when it does reopen, we'll have access to Pyongyang, which will keep us very busy on those itineraries. Mount Myeonghang will be there. Wonsan Galma, the new resort that's in the headlines and everyone knows about, that we'll have access to that. But I think we'll lose a bit of access to some of the neighboring provinces. But we can start from there. But I do believe, though, our partners up in North Hamgyong province, one of my favorite provinces, and that's the first trip that you and I did together, Justin, back in 2016. Yeah, awesome. God, we've known each other for a long time. We should do a 10-year anniversary celebration. I'm expecting for them to reach out and we can open out that province as well. But, a hard reboot, step by step. But I can see it quickly gaining traction and for us to have full-fledged access to 8 of the 9 provinces. And if not all 9 provinces, I would love to get my hands on a couple of cities up there for tourism. So here's hoping. But, I'll have my expectations set small so we can just get the borders open, get people moving in and out, and grow from there.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that the type of access that we had when DPRK tourism closed in 2020, that did not come overnight. From 2008 to 2020, the 12 years that we were leading tours to DPRK, the access came gradually, and we were always sort of pushing the limits, pushing the boundaries, trying to expand into new areas, new itineraries and things that we could do. So it'll be sort of back to square one again, but we'll be up for putting the work in.
Yeah. And to break the myth, most people think it's the North Koreans that come to us, letting us know what we have access to, but it's us continuously pushing. It's us meeting in the middle. You know, it's we can't always have it our way. They can't always have it their way, but it's meeting in the middle, and it's these years of negotiation and trialing things and trust and respect is what gets us really far. But yeah, here we go, man. Here's open 2026. Fingers crossed.
All right. Well, as I said, you can go on our website and check out Rowan's article, 5 Key Takeaways from Our Recent Trip to Pyongyang in 2025. It's got some great photos that directly correlate to some of the things that we are discussing here on this podcast. As Rowan said, as soon as we have news about a wider reopening, we will be updating our customers. Anyway, Rowan, it's usually it's me here conducting the interviews, and this was a fun sort of debrief. This is sort of different than our usual format. So thanks for being on and sharing your reflections on our trip. And we look forward to having you back on the Young Pioneer podcast when DPRK reopens for tourism, or maybe about something else. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds?
Thanks, Justin. I really appreciate it. We can talk a lot. I'm sure this episode could go for much longer, but I hope it was interesting enough for our listeners. But I'll see you soon. Hope to see our listeners soon on other destinations. And I've said it once. I'll say it a million times. Stay tuned for North Korea news.
Bye.
Bye then.
That was a discussion between me and Rowan Beard about our once-in-a-lifetime trip to the Pyongyang International Film Festival. Rest assured, we will update you here when there's more news on North Korea travel. Before we wrap up, here are a couple of last-minute January departures that might interest you. First up, our Western Sahara tour. We start in Leun, the de facto capital of Western Sahara, where traces of Spanish colonial rule still shape the city. From there, we head south to Tarfaya, before making an epic overland journey of more than 500 kilometers where the Sahara meets the Atlantic. That road delivers us to Dakhla, a place that feels half desert, half ocean dream. Flamingos, lagoons, desert islands, hot springs, untouched beaches, and some of the freshest oysters anywhere. If you want to stand somewhere that still feels genuinely undiscovered, this is it, running January 22nd to January 26th. We also have our Benin and Togo tour, a deep dive into West Africa's living traditions, from the Snake King of Dasazume to private ceremonies of Abome and rituals near Lake Aheme that few outsiders ever witness. You'll see why Vodun is not sorcery, but a central pillar of West African identity. Beyond that, we'll meet the Hali communities known for facial scarification, whose traditions stretch back centuries, and even traces of Benin's former socialist period still visible if you know where to look. Crossing into Togo, the pace shifts. Lomé is home to Africa's largest fetish market, while Togoville, reached by canoe across Lake Togo, offers a slower rhythm rooted in lakeside life and long-standing spiritual practice. This one runs January 26th to February 3rd, and the two are easily connected. Also, don't forget to vote in the poll and let us know where you want to go next. And finally, a bit of perspective. Pitcairn Island was settled by accident when bounty mutineers discovered it had been mischarted on a Royal Navy map. They ended up exiled at the edge of the world with no way back. In 2025, navigation is better, borders are clearer, and the difference is simple. You only end up somewhere truly remote if you choose to be there. That's what we do at Young Pioneer Tours. We don't stumble into the edges of the map. We go there on purpose. And that's why I am leaving tomorrow, January 1st, 2026, for YPT's inaugural Pitcairn tour. We'll be running it again in January 2027. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the road. I'm Justin Martell, and this is the Young Pioneer Podcast.